Hello, listeners. Been wondering how you can help the show? Probably not. But here are 5 things you can do. 1. Subscribe. Support the show by clicking the subscription link in the show notes. 2. Review on iTunes, on our website, www.afraidofnothingpodcast.com, or on whatever app you listen to. 3. Donate. When you go to our website, click the cute coffee cup icon. Or in the show notes, click the subscription link. 4. Share. Sharing really is caring. Tell your friends and even your enemies to check out the show. 5. Watch. Wait a minute, it's a podcast, not a movie. Actually, it's both. Check the show notes to find out where to watch the documentary. You can also rent it on Prime Video. That's it. Oh, one last thing. Enjoy this episode.
In a world where nothing is known, nothing is certain, reality is not real. Wake up! Be afraid of nothing. I'm Bob Heskey.
Robert.
The host with the ghost.
This is my podcast, based on my paranormal documentary, Afraid of Nothing. Each episode, we talk to people who see life and the afterlife through a different lens. Join me.
Who is this large man? And what's he doing in our bedroom?
As we lift the veil and open our minds to see beyond our eyes lie. This is Afraid of Nothing.
Tonight's guest is a paranormal investigator who really walks the talk. Daniel Klaes brought one of the most infamous haunted houses, the Hinsdale house in western New York. If you follow the paranormal and you haven't heard of the Hinsdale house, well, check your pulse, because you might be dead. The house has been investigated in the mid-1970s by Lorraine and Ed Warren, and more recently by dozens of paranormal researchers, including Nick Groff and Katrina Weidman for Paranormal Lockdown in 2016. The house has had 2 exorcisms and has had sightings of cryptids, UFOs, shadow figures, ghosts, and dark entities. Several paranormal researchers have even reported the house shaking during an investigation. A veteran in the paranormal field, Daniel is the host of Within These Walls on VidiSpace, which can be viewed on Amazon Prime and all of your streaming devices. Daniel has also been cast as a team member on the longest-running independent ghost hunting show, The Ghost Finders, Season 10. The Ghost Finders is proud to be featured on Roku's Spirit Channel and can be found on Amazon Prime as well as other leading streaming services. In 2012, Daniel co-founded the Greater Western New York Paranormal Society, which was responsible for tackling some of the most challenging paranormal cases in the New York region. In June of 2015, Daniel realized his lifelong dream when he purchased the 1853 Hinsdale house, which came on the market and was about to be demolished. Dan bought and saved the house, which is currently staged in its 1970s period dressing, in order to maintain its integrity from that era when the hauntings first began. The home is currently used as a paranormal research location. You can connect with Daniel to inquire about tours and private investigations at his website, www.danielklaes.com. That's www.danielklaes.com. All right, we're here with Daniel Klaes, the gentleman who bought the Hinsdale house in western New York. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. You're a busy guy. I mean, last night you were a guest on the Paranormal Rewind show with friends Sam Baltrusis and Keith Bailey. How did that go?
Oh, man, it went by way too quick. I mean, it didn't even seem like we were getting started, and we didn't even get to scratch the surface. Hour goes by so quick.
Yeah, and you are a man in demand. A couple years ago, I emptied out my 401k to make a feature film, and my wife wasn't too happy with me at the time. And actually, I'm divorced now, so I can certainly emphasize with you following your dream, but How did your wife react when you first told her that you were interested in putting a bid on the Hinsdale house?
Well, the first reaction was that I was crazy, because I was basically using what we had left because we had just bought a new house for our family. So I was going to be taking up the rest of the savings plus a small loan in order to put the down payment on this house. And it didn't have very many good selling points to it at the point when I bought it. So it was like pulling teeth.
You had actually investigated there beforehand, correct? Had you been there a few times?
Yeah, I had been going there for years, and I had such a personal connection the last time I went there, right when they had ripped all the electrical and duct work out of the location. And I knew at that point I wanted to try to save the house because of the communication that I was getting. And my thought process was that there's definitely other energies there that need to have a voice that weren't getting a voice. And the experience that I had connecting with one of the other energies at the house just really made me push forward in trying to get it.
So this isn't your first haunted house that you bought, correct? You grew up in a haunted house and later you bought the house. Why did you buy the house after you grew up and had some paranormal experiences there?
Just because it was a familiar neighborhood, I knew all the neighbors, I knew that my kids would be going to a good school district. As a kid, you were bothered by what was going on, and I knew what was going on in the house at that point. I didn't know if it was still going on. Soon after moving in, my son started telling me things, hearing things. My wife told me that she had seen a little girl on the steps, going down the stairs, walking down the stairs. My son said he saw a little boy. And the conclusion that I had when I bought that house is, with the research that I did, is that there were two children spirits living there. When I got the deed and we were able to actually find what they were attached to, it was really kind of like a lifelong Scooby-Doo episode for me. I even got their names, and I have a painting of them right now. So still to this day that's with me. Like they're like a part of my family.
I was going to say, was that painting from in Lilydale? You're not too far from Lilydale, and there's a medium out there that does drawings of spirits that are around you. Was that from Lilydale, or where'd you get the painting from of the children?
So actually, I do have a connection with Lilydale because I had gone to Lilydale, and at that point, I didn't really believe too much in psychics. I wasn't a believer yet, and I had gone there, and my friend told me to go to see I was going to see the president of the Lilydale Assembly. Her name was Ellen Bourne. Before I even sat down with her, gave her $1, didn't do anything yet. She's like, "You have two children spirits living in your house." I'm like, what? Like she just like kind of just flabbergasted me because she would have had no recollection of why I was going there, what questions I had, and she just blew my mind the whole time that I was reading with her. I had to go back to my house and try to figure out what they were attached to per what she was saying, and eventually we ended up finding this painting up in this crawl space of this attic that was in the house. I would have never looked up there. All the years went by and we had no clue. There was more than one, but when I turned the painting around, it was a picture of a little boy and girl playing with a dog.
Wow.
After all these years, here it is. Just like she said, here's what they were attached to. And I felt like I solved the mystery, and I felt like I helped them move on to the other side. That's what really, really sparked my interest even more.
Did those spirits move on? Were they, once you figured out what was going on with them and you found that painting, did all that kind of go away, or how did you know that they were no longer there?
Yeah, I mean, when we found the painting, we acknowledged them, acknowledged that was them, and then we told them that it was okay to go to the light. And it seemed like they were still there, but they weren't there like they were. The presence of them wasn't there as much. Things would happen all the time, like my sister's stuffed animals would get moved off of her bed, and she's an OCD. Like she'd put them on her bed neatly every day. Come home, they'd be sitting in the middle of the floor, crayon drawings on the ceiling, just little things, nothing malicious, just like little pranks, childhood pranks. And that all seemed to subside. But when we were talking about them, sometimes it felt like maybe they were there. They were acknowledging that they were still with us, but they had moved on. There's a possibility that they can come back and forth, but the level of activity went down significantly when we found the painting.
Was this on TV? Was your experience on My Paranormal Nightmare? Was it this?
It was. Yes.
Okay. Wow. That's great.
Did you see that episode?
And I heard about it. And also, since you talked to Sam Baltrusis, he's had a couple of his experiences, dramatized on TV, including the 100th episode, I think, of A Haunting. But I was going to ask you, were you happy with how it was portrayed?
Yeah, I mean, they did a pretty decent job with it. They didn't really exaggerate too much. I mean, I don't think I would have told my sister, here, let me help you pick those up. Little things like that. They made me seem like a nicer guy than I was as a big brother. I teased her a lot, but they did a decent job with it. When you do these type of reenactment shows, they tend to embellish a little bit, but with this story, they didn't have to, because everything that we said and told them about, they reenacted, and that was the story. So they didn't really have to add anything to it.
Your decision to buy your parents' childhood house that you grew up in was kind of validated with that. And are you undergoing a similar thing now with the Hinsdale house, where you're picking up some evidence and picking up some pieces, and you think you'll have some closure at some point with this house?
I think so, and I think that everything happens the way it's supposed to. Everything happens for a reason, and I was drawn to that location for a reason, and the personal experience that I had there, it happened, and it got me to want to purchase the location. And I think maybe they knew that I would handle the location the right way, the way it's supposed to, not like a fun house, not like a joke of a haunted location, where I'd actually respect the energies there and pay homage to maybe things that needed to be paid homage to, and really do the right things that needed to be done in order to give the spirits and energies there a voice and be able to turn over the secret. We have a lot of amazing things coming out. Before we started the show, you had mentioned the Dead Remains that I'm working on with Nick Groff. And working with Nick has just really opened up a lot of doors for the Hinsdale house. Since the moment I met him, he's just been infatuated with the location. The series that's going to be coming out, called Dead Remains, it's going to blow people's minds, because we were able to do things looking into some folklore, looking into claims. We're going to be able to give some answers to people. So I'm really excited. I wish I could talk about it more. People that are fans of the location and fans of me, hold tight, because it's going to blow your mind.
Well, that's a great tease. And there's some cool stuff with Nick when he was there with Paranormal Lockdown in 2016. I think the first thing we'll start with is talk about the history of the house. So it started like in the 1970s. There was a family, Clara and Phil Dandy, and their children. They moved in, and they had a whole bunch of crazy stuff happening, not just like a ghost, but a bunch of different things. So can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah, so they were having poltergeist activity happening in the house. All the children were affected. All of them were affected in one way or another. Laura, the daughter, was affected probably the most out of all of them. She was getting scratch marks and getting probably scared the most out of all of the children there. But they were all seeing like ghosts on the outside of the house. They were seeing like a woman in white out by the pond dancing, and then they'd run outside and she'd be gone. Michael, who was the son who passed away a few years ago in a car accident, he would have like board games fall off his shelf while he was sleeping on top and be thrown on him when he was on his bed. Dolls would move. The stove would be turned on. If you think about in modern day, when you're doing research now, a lot of the stuff probably wouldn't be as scary, but because it's new to them, they were freaked out. This is supposed to be their dream home, their home away from the city and living in the country with a nice pond. And even to this day, speaking with Clara, she thought it was beautiful and she loved it, but it was what was in the earth and what was really coming out at them, which would force them to leave.
It's 1970s. That's like 50 years ago. It's insane when you think about that. Did Ed and Lorraine Warren come and investigate while the Dandies were there?
Yeah, while Nick was actually shooting Paranormal Lockdown, he had his nephew there, and they called Lorraine on the phone, and Lorraine gave Nick a piece of advice about the house, and she said, "Nick, go to church." She knew of it. She was there when she was doing a speaking engagement. There's actually at St. Bonaventure University, there is a file. Now, the priest that did all the work with Phil and Clara, and it was also very much affiliated with Ed and Lorraine Warren, has a case there, basically in the vaults that I can't get at yet. Possible that maybe I will be able to get in, but it says Ed and Lorraine Warren on it. A lot of the times the Catholic Church will not open these up while the people are still alive. If it has anything to do with Clara, she's still alive, and it's not been something that we've been able to access at this point.
Were there 2 exorcisms that were performed there? Failed exorcisms?
There was one failed structural exorcism of the location in 1974. I think it was April 13th of 1974. That's what basically made the family flee from the house, because that was the final thing. That was the final thing that they were able to do that could possibly help them to be able to stay there, and it didn't work.
Was there an exorcism on a person, like the daughter who was the most inflicted, or was it on the house, or what was the exorcism on?
No, the exorcism actually came years later. Within the past 15 years, a priest from Niagara Falls performed an exorcism on an individual that was very infatuated with the house. He was going there every day, and it got to the point where they said that his eyes turned black. And I wasn't involved with the house when this happened. I just interviewed the priest when he gave me the information about the exorcism. I got permission to talk to him. He actually had to leave the location, and he hadn't been back for almost 8 years. Whatever the energy was, the darker energy that was there, basically tried to take over his body, and they had to act swiftly.
You don't live there. How far away do you live from the Hinsdale house, and how often do you make it out there?
So I live in Buffalo, New York area, so it's about an hour and a half north of Hinsdale. Hinsdale is in the southern tier, real close to the border of Pennsylvania. I go there probably a couple times a month. I knew that it wasn't going to be something that I could over infatuate myself with just because of past experiences with other people. So what I really did is I put together a team of reliable, respectable people that know the house, that know the ins and outs of it, what to tell people, show people how to stay grounded. And we kind of rotate the duties there. So it's not always the same person going in all the time. If you're a team and you're going in to investigate the claims of the house, it could be me taking you through. It could be Billy. It could be Tiffany. It could be Chelsea. It could be Michelle. It could be one of quite a few people that I have on my team. We try not to overdo it there.
That sounds like a win-win. I was at the Conjuring house. I never met Corey and Jen Heinzen, but I met John Huntington was there when I was there, and he kind of watches the house. He's really good at EVPs. I was almost wondering if you had someone like that there, which is a really win-win. It's funny. I think of people that buy haunted houses, the best ones are the ones that are paranormal investigator backgrounds and that are laid back and go in with a good heart, go in respecting the house. People that buy haunted houses, I interviewed an author, Joni Mahan, about the S.K. Pierce Victorian Haunted Mansion in Gardner,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a couple that bought it, and nice people, but they had everybody coming in, and it almost, according to the book, the ghosts there were almost getting upset at the people that they were bringing in, and it was just, there was a repercussion. She almost felt like the ghosts wanted them out of the house and almost drove them out. But stories where it seems like the Conjuring house in Hinsdale, for example, on doing research for this, I've heard you say that you've had more good experiences than negative experiences. You don't think there's anything demonic here at all, correct?
No, I don't.
And you haven't had, look, a worry that someone would have would be if something followed you home. You haven't, like Nick Roth, we'll talk about in a couple of minutes, you haven't had anything follow you home or affect your family. You're pretty much on good terms with the house, and once you leave, you're left alone for the most part. Is that accurate?
Correct. Yeah, I haven't, knock on wood, had anything like that happen to me in my whole career. So,
Wow, that's amazing. Because you had mentioned, like in 2016, Nick Roth and Katrina Weidman were there for Paranormal Lockdown. That's kind of an interesting story. You had bought the house in 2015, and you got an email from his cousin Justin, I think, and you didn't know who he was, right? And then
yeah,
you found out it's Nick Roth, and it's not just they come in for a day or a night. They're there for like 3 consecutive days.
4 days actually.
4.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Wow. And were you there a lot when they were doing that episode? Were you there a lot and kind of a fly on the wall, knowing what's going on, or did they want you off the premises?
Well, I'm the owner. I mean, they can't kick me off the premises, but
There you go.
I didn't want to I didn't want to impede on what they were doing, but I did want to see what they were doing. So I did go down twice and just kind of just check out, hung out with Justin and saw what they were doing. I had to get interviewed with Nick, and I had asked a couple of people that were involved with the location to come down and interview with Nick as well, and Katrina, and also a gentleman that was there during the exorcism in 1974. He was a friend of the family that was actually at the house while it happened. And it was just interesting to see the whole process. It really made me respect Nick, what he does, in the field, how seriously he takes it. He gets really involved with the location and the history and wants to tell the story the correct way and just really understand it. To this day, he's been a big proponent for me as far as promoting the location, inviting me to go to Nick Groff tours. During COVID, we did a pop-up thing where he came to the house where for a small group and investigated with them, which was really awesome because I don't ever know what to expect. He calls me up. He's like, I'm going to be in Buffalo. Let's do a pop-up. I put it on sale and it sells out within 2 minutes.
Wow.
It was awesome. He does stuff like that. And being involved with the television shows and stuff like that and meeting all the celebrities and stuff, he stands out as just an amazing individual to me. He has my respect.
Yeah, for listeners that don't know, and they should, he's one of the founders of Ghost Adventures. Then he went and did a couple other shows, including Paranormal Lockdown. He actually, after filming that, he had something follow him home. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm at the stage where, I had just met the celebrity. My God, I have his phone number, but I don't want to bug him. It was a situation where it felt like the house had lightened up a little bit after they left. And I thought maybe he did a cleansing or he tried something and didn't tell me about it. And then I was doing a tour one night and I had a Geo box and I had it going in the kitchen and I was getting all these positive responses from a female energy. And then all of a sudden it got really heavy. You could feel like the whole house get heavy. And all of a sudden the only thing that was coming through the Geo was, "Where's Nick?" Calling for him. Recorded it on my phone. I'm like, he's got to hear this. And I texted it to him and then he called me right away. And he's like, you wouldn't have known this. He goes, I felt like I had something follow me home and I just cleansed my house. Like literally just cleansed my house. And when he did that, that's when it's this darker energy felt like it was back at the location again.
And now, a disturbing break from our program. Sorry.
Tonight's episode is sponsored by the Afraid of Nothing documentary. That's right, the film that inspired this podcast. Haven't checked it out? For shame. But there's still time to save face. You can watch it on Amazon Prime, Vidispace, or on Vimeo On Demand. Check the show notes, then check it out. Now, back to our episode,
Afraid of the Hinsdale House.
To his credit, like you said, it didn't deter him. He's come back several times, and he's still doing projects with you now. So he keeps coming back to the location. Does he change? Does he now do special grounding and protection when he comes to the house and leaves? Does he have a different process that he does now?
I think he has his own process, but I also think like he kind of dealt with that on his own. He came there alone and confronted whatever that was. I wasn't there with him. I know it was just him and Justin were there, and he needed to come there and confront it. And from that point on, he just knew that there was more to this, more than just this energy that attached to him. And he's just been able to open up so many doors now, and I feel like this energy is still there, but it feels suppressed in a way because a lot of the work that we've been doing there, bringing positive light to the location and really touching the spirits and the energies that are there. Like, well, there's definitely a native element to this property, and we do offerings to the native spirits. We've had shamans there, we've had witches there. We've tried to deal with in a positive way any type of negative that may have been there, and allowing them to know that we come in peace and we are there to do the right things and have their voices heard.
We should say the house is built on Indian burial grounds, which is classic, right? It's either a lot of these houses, they're on Indian burial grounds or they're on sites of battles, right?
Sure.
Which is like the Conjuring house. So in your opinion, which is more haunted? Do you think the house or the land?
I think the house was put there on property that was already cursed. The outside of the house was always more of a mystery to me than the inside of the house because there's so many different elements out there. So, I mean, they're all equally as active to me. I can't really pinpoint. Like, I've been keeping records since I've owned the house. Actually, before I owned the house, they've kept ledgers, and just listening and hearing what all the teams have dealt with. When they come there on the weekends, or what type of evidence they're getting. It's everywhere. I thought, I'm going to make a map and I'm going to put an X every time something happens here, and an X every time something happens here. like a little pin board or something like that. It's spread all around. People are having experience in different spots, and it's just very, very busy.
There's actually multiple types of, look, it's been over the course of 50 years. There's actually multiple types of paranormal reports, correct? There are cryptids, UFOs, shadow figures, full apparitions, elementals. Yeah. What are some of the cryptids? Is it Bigfoot? Is it the Pukwudgie? What are some of the cryptids that people have seen there?
Well, we have Bigfoot castings from feet, but the one that really popped out was a couple of years ago. A researcher, Jeff Fent, really kind of broke the whole story for us, because you go up into the forest and you always feel like something's watching you, and you always hear like twigs breaking or some footsteps, and it's just like you never could figure out if it was an animal or what was going on. And he just felt very drawn to the forest. He came and he did some experiments, and he brought different light spectrums, and he was shooting different lights directly into the forest and taking pictures. And he caught this amazing picture of a creature 10 foot up in the tree that nobody could explain until I showed it to a shaman. First thing that came out of his mouth is, "It's a Pukwudgie." I was like, "What?" And I didn't even know what a Pukwudgie was at that point. So I'm researching here and thinking, oh my gosh, I gotta have this thing that's gonna shoot poison darts at me, and all these stories about Pukwudgie.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I mean, they're a cryptid that's protecting Indian burial grounds, and you have to respect them and respect their ground, and then they would respect you back.
They're not like Bigfoot, which is huge, right? 8 or 10 feet. Are they
No.
like 3 feet or something? They're smaller type?
Yeah, they're small. They're very small, and he fit, in a span of 2 trees, with probably about 3 foot long.
Oh my God. So is that kind of an outlier that just crops up every once in a while, or is that somewhat of a common thing? I mean, look, people probably just come to the house. They don't go out into the woods a lot, but are there recently, beyond that, other cryptid sightings or UFO sightings on the property?
Yeah. So there was another team that captured a picture of this Pukwudgie this summer, actually. And
Wow.
people when they come to the house, part of their investigation is always on the outside. They know the stories, or they're learning the stories, and they know that there's a hanging tree. They know that there's stories about a person that could be out by the pond. They know that people do their research, and they know that these things have happened there, and they want to try to experience them for themselves. And that's, for the most part, most of the teams that come there always, part of their investigation is outside.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of a Skinwalker Ranch type of thing, which is in Nevada, I think. I mean, you're in Western New York, but it's just to give people a picture, it's very isolated. I mean, your neighbors are probably, maybe a half a mile down the road or whatever. It's not densely populated. If you're going there, I mean, I haven't been there, but if you're going there in the winter, you need a pretty good 4-wheel drive car. If there's a lot of snow, it's not like like the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast, which is in the middle of Fall River. It's isolated, correct?
It feels desolate, yeah, especially in the winter. It just all you see is white everywhere. This house just sitting there. I remember the first time I came up there was in the winter, and it just gave you a creep factor. You're at this site of a failed exorcism in the middle of nowhere with no means of communication, and phones didn't work, no Wi-Fi. It just reminded me of like a horror movie. Like, is this going to be like a horror movie happening?
Yeah, exactly. Are there investigators that have actually experienced the house shaking at times when they've done kind of research there? Has that happened a few times?
Yeah. There's a couple of researchers that have been there, and actually last weekend on Friday night, Mike Hatcher was there with his group filming, and he told me that he felt like the whole house was shaking. Joe Pieri, he owns Paranormal Oddities. It's a paranormal store in Western New York. He's had it on camera with it shaking before, the whole house. And there's no it's not like a area where we get a ton of earthquakes or anything like that. Very, very rarely does something like that happen. For them to experiencing that on a constant basis just kind of blows my mind.
So every house has its main room. Sometimes it's the basement, whatever. In your house, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a room called Mary's room on the second floor with a history of strange insect infestations and even rumored to have a portal. What's going on with that room? When you bought the house, was there an insect infestation that you had to clear up? Did you ever find out what caused that? Is that the room that most people, that they really have a lot of weird experiences in?
Back in the 1970s, the Dandy family, when they lived there, they actually boarded that room up because they thought that that's where everything was stemming from. Now, that's also the only room in the house that I've never attempted to sleep in. I go in there and I just get a weary feeling, and it just doesn't feel right to me. Now, there have been people that have stayed in there that have told me that they've been touched, but that's the room too where all the flies and the bugs seem to just go to. When I bought the house, the bees, there was honeybees into the floorboard of that room. They had to have been there for years. Clara Dandy talked about that in her book, about how the bees took over the house when they were moving in, and they had to call a beekeeper out, and they never left. These bees, I mean, this honeycomb was like 4 foot into the floorboard. They estimated about 500,000 honeybees in the floorboards of this room. They say insects are attracted to like an EMF. So many places they could have gone, but they chose that room. I had to get a beekeeper out. We had to cut a hole in the floor of the bedroom in order to get them out of there. And I didn't want to kill them. When I was there last weekend, there were flies buzzing around up there. And it's 30 degrees out. Well, there should be no reason for bugs to be flying in the house.
Was that the room where they tried to do the exorcism?
No, they did the exorcism in the living room downstairs. There was a psychic there, and the family all knelt in the center of the living room, and they did it down there.
We mentioned before you don't think there's anything demonic there, but what do you think is there, and what type of experiences have you had?
I mean, I've had experiences where you're having an energy that seems to swear a lot, seems to suppress other energies that are there. And when he comes out, he seems to want to take over the location, start swearing, telling you to go. I don't think it's a human energy. And so many psychics that have come there have said that. They said he's attached to the land. It's also, if you don't acknowledge it, if you this is what I always tell people, if that starts happening, don't acknowledge it. Maybe move on to something else. Go outside, go leave for an hour and come back, because the less we acknowledge it, the less power it has. And it's been working. But I've been involved with a few demonic cases in my career, and this does not feel like anything that I've dealt with demonically. So it just feels like I don't know, like not a protector, but just a bastard of a spirit that's really miserable, that wants to take it out on everybody. And I could see how somebody may feel it is, but he's not causing harm to people. He's just being an.
Do you think it's similar to like the Conjuring house with what's going on there? Because there's like that one room upstairs where a lot of more activity, and look, at the library there is too, but activity at that house really picks up apparently more at night. Also a lot of outside stuff going on, but not the degree of the UFOs and cryptids that you have. But do you find some similarities between that house and your house?
There is. I mean, as far as like the stories and stuff go, but I don't know. I haven't really dove into the history of that location or looked into it as much as I've looked into Hinsdale House. Because of the UFO stuff, we're looking at different parallel lines, how they're crisscrossing, where they're crisscrossing, because many people have seen it. And even dating back to the 1970s, Clara wrote in her book about the lights coming in the window. That's how close they were to the house. If these lines are like a highway, maybe there's a highway in my backyard. I don't know. I've seen them after an event. I saw these lights in the sky, and I'm like, and it's something that you would think like would be like if somebody put up a screen and had like a laser light, and they put it up on the, put a laser up on the screen or something like that. I saw another one pop down, and they like zigzagged together and just vanished. I was like, what in God's green earth was that? MUFON comes out there. They do SETI meditations out by my pond. They feel like it's a place where possible communication with an alien could take place.
So they feel like it's like an energy vortex or something, where on the property where it's kind of like a draw or something.
Sure.
Yeah, that would kind of explain. I would have all that weird stuff coming if there's some type of energy field going on there. Yeah, wow, that's insane. I mean, the house had also is, it's supposed to be the site of some alleged crimes. I don't know which are true or not, but I'm going to throw out a couple, and if you don't mind, say if, yeah, that's true, or if they're false or not.
Sure.
There was one, a man murdered his brother, a young boy was killed in a buzzsaw accident, a young woman was hung from a tree in the woods nearby, and I know even some of the dandies, there's been, you wouldn't say it was murdered by the house, but there were some things that could be connected to their experiences in the house. Any thoughts on those crimes that happen, and if there's any connection to the land and its energy?
Well, I can tell you this, as far as like with the Dandies go, interviewing Clara, she feels like the house. She said it, the house came back and got my son. She feels like it, like, I mean, to this day, this is just interviewing her last year, and she was in tears, and she said it came back to get him.
Oh, that's
You know,
awful.
that's how much sediment she has towards the location. Laura was affected by the location so much. I don't know how much that played into her committing suicide, but she killed herself.
Oh, jeez.
You know, she was older, so I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say the house caused it. She may have had her own demons she had to deal with. I don't know. I don't want to think about that. But as far as the other claims that you said, the brother that killed his brother, that happened. That 100% happened. We have the newspaper article. He just got out of jail last summer. He was incarcerated in Tennessee. The boy getting killed by a buzzsaw was Alfred Warren Emerson in 1947. And that happened. 100% happened. We have that newspaper article documenting the event. The girl being hung, it's a story that was told by a psychic, Alex Tanis, when he was coming there with the priest. The only thing that we can say is 100% correct with that is that there was a hanging tree. The town of Hinsdale's hanging tree was on the northeast corner of the property. It was struck by lightning in 2003 and then fell over into a ditch. But the story he told was a woman that had gotten married, got pregnant, and her husband went off to fight the war, but they didn't have enough to get a ring, accused of committing adultery and hung while she was pregnant.
Oh my God.
That's folklore. I mean, there's no way to prove that at this point, but that's what the psychic came up with, and there's actually a lot of psychics that are unfamiliar with the location that have come there that say a similar story, you know, and it's like, did you just hear that on the internet, or are you actually coming up with that? But there's been enough for me to believe that something like that could have happened.
You have so many storylines that you just talked about right there. You could have your own Conjuring series, movie series based on, I mean, all the different things that you talked about, the crimes that happen, the different types of paranormal sightings. That's just, wow, that's incredible. What about people who lived there after the Dandies? Was there a family that lived there for a decade and nothing happened? Were there families that left very quickly because they had a lot of problems? What did you find out about the families after the Dandies left between the 1980s to the present?
So the last family that lived there was in 86. It was very hard to get information on families that lived there because in 69, when the house and the property was purchased, the woman that bought it was using it as a land lease. So she broke the 100 acres that she purchased up into 10-acre plots and put hunting cabins and then leased to own them for all these years. So for all these years, people would sign this lease with the high interest rate, never get able to pay the location off because they weren't there that long. I interviewed 2 families that lived there for less than 2 months.
Oh.
One actually left all of their personal belongings in the house because they didn't want what was ever there to know that they were leaving, they said. One left because their dog ran out in front of a truck and committed suicide. And they said that the dog was the most loyal dog. It would have never left their side. It just got up out of a chair and ran into the street. I'm like, wow, that's very odd. And we've actually captured pictures of spirit animals there. Many. Definitely got an awesome picture of a dog in the kitchen.
You mentioned a shaman, or you've had shamans there.
Yeah.
Anything interesting that the shamans told you?
The shaman focused on the land, trying to help heal the land, and went over what we can do as far as offerings go to the native spirits there. And we had just such a productive drum circle out by the fire with a group of people, and it felt like just such a lightening, like a load lightened off the land. He gave a food offering and then kind of just showed us what we can do in order to pay homage and show respect to the spirits out there, which was really cool.
So this isn't a house and a location where you can clear it
No.
totally. It sounds like you pretty much have to live in harmony with what's ever there, particularly the Native American aspect, and coexist as peacefully as possible.
Yeah, and I mean, it was attempted to get cleared, by the Catholic Church, and it didn't work. So that's why I thought we had to open it up to different elements, bringing in a Wiccan and bringing in a shaman, bringing in different lay people that maybe a different belief system that may connect with something there, just so whatever we're connecting with will understand what our purpose is and what we want. That's been my goal in healing the land and the property since I bought it.
Yeah, that sounds like the right tack. I mean, this year with the pandemic, there's been kind of a new thing of streaming, where cameras are set up. And the first one was the Conjuring House with the Dark Zone TV. And then there was the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast, which is now for sale, ironically. And then I think
Yeah.
the Queen Mary. But you were doing that before that, right? Weren't you setting up streaming cameras, like even before the pandemic hit, capturing footage and having people contact you and let you know what they saw? Because it's very tough to monitor all those cameras. Is that something you've been doing for a while?
Yeah, it was one of my goals because it didn't have internet. It didn't have any way for anybody to communicate when they were up there in case something happened. So I had to get satellite internet installed, and it was super expensive just to get anything that I could use for streaming. But we had finally got it set up, and probably was about like 3-4 years ago. I had worked with paranormalwarehouse.com, and we had purchased a camera. We were there, set it up, tested it. It was working great. And we're like, okay, let's just stream this. Let's bring this house to all the people that want to come here or want to experience Hinsdale. Let's bring this house to them live. I said, oh, I don't know how long people are going to stare at a screen, but unbelievable. The thousands of people were watching this live stream. And I was in the chat room and I was answering questions about the location, taking people's names. We need to come there. I don't know. It was just like an amazing thing to be able to put it out live, and it promoted the house. That's the word I was looking for. Help promote the location.
I was gonna say, didn't you fall asleep? I was trying to. Didn't you fall asleep on the couch and your phone was buzzing and people were finding all this stuff like a shadow person or something, right?
Yeah. So I was, I just dozed off. I was sitting on the couch and I had probably been answering questions for 3-4 hours, and then all of a sudden my phone just is going crazy. Bzz, bzz, just. And I look and I'm like, oh my God, I fell asleep. And then I looked at the phone and people are sending me screenshots. And I'm like, my God, look at that. We got a picture of a shadow in the kitchen coming in from the front door. I'm like, holy cow. And this is amazing because it's like you get this footage, and I, as an investigator, would have to take the 7 hours of footage and go through it and try to find it. Now I have thousands of people seeing the same thing and documenting the time. It's time stamping it for me. And all I have to do is go back to the live feed and at that timestamp and pull it. And I have all these extra eyes on it, extra help. I'm like, holy crap, we got the Holy Grail on the first night. This is what I wanted. This is what I wanted people to experience. And it's been amazing. We've actually had things move on camera, EVPs caught on camera, because the new cameras that we have actually have video and voice on them now. So we have 5 cameras there now. And we actually utilize that for the teams that come there as well. So they actually get 5 cameras recording from the time they come in the building till the next morning as extra evidence for them to take with them when they investigate the location. We call it ghost cams.
Yeah, you have so much on your plate, but boy, it would be awesome if you did talk to Nick and maybe you do some streaming event, because not only in the house, outside, there's a lot of stuff that you could capture too. You could have all these different teams. That would be so awesome to have 3 or 4 days of live stream at the Hinsdale house, both inside and outside, maybe a shaman outside and the mediums inside or whatever. That would be excellent entertainment at some point. So I'd definitely pay to watch that, Daniel, I'll tell you.
I think it's a possibility at some point for sure.
Cool.
With the success that we had with The Conjuring, when we did The Conjuring in October,
Yep.
This live seance, I mean, that was great.
Yeah, what was your takeaway? Because part of that was like doing reenacting the seance from the exact day, like, I don't know, less than 50 years ago, but 40 something. Were you actually there that day when the seance was going on?
Yeah, I was sitting at the table. Megan was one of my. She's on the show The Ghost Finders with me, which is the longest streaming independent paranormal show that's on Amazon Prime. Nick put her in charge of running the seance, and then he invited me, and it was quite the experience. I felt the table shaking. It was a surreal thing to know that when we were asking questions that there was enough energy to actually move the table. He had some people there that had never been doing anything paranormal before, that just got so freaked out by being involved with that and actually seeing that happening. I was actually sitting right next to one of the kids, and I was like, he was like, oh my God. He kept freaking out.
Yeah, I guess, it's like you, I'm on video space for the film. So fortunately, I think Nick and Elizabeth Saint give me like a free subscription or whatever, and I actually listened in on some of that. And yeah, I forget the kid's name, but he thought he had some type of attachment, right? Was that?
Yeah.
He thought he had. Yeah. Okay. That was intense. Jeez. Wow. Yeah, that's great stuff. I kind of want to respect your time. So let's going forward. I just want to ask you, what recommendations do you have for someone who's considering buying a haunted house? I call you and I say, Daniel, there's this house right down the street. I know it's haunted. I think I want to buy it. What would you counsel me? What would you say?
Well, what are you buying it for? Would be my first question. What's the reason that you want to buy it?
Okay, I would say that's a great question. I would say, well, I've always had an interest in the paranormal. I've done a paranormal documentary. I have a paranormal podcast. I have a lot of friends that are in the industry that could go and do research there. So I would want to buy it to respectfully make it open for paranormal research and maybe even make a documentary based on it.
Okay, so I would say that make sure that you're crossing your T's, dotting your I's before buying it. Number one thing that you need to do is to talk to the county and talk to the city that it's in to make sure that they would be okay allowing you to have that kind of like basically a paranormal bed and breakfast. You're going to have people coming in and out of there. If it's a residential neighborhood, how did the neighbors feel about you having people in and out of there? That was one of the first things for me is I had to connect with my neighbors because of what was happening prior to me buying the location. So not only do you have to respect the location, you have to respect the town, you have to respect the residents in the town because it's their town. Now this town, Hinsdale, is famous for a haunted house, not it's a horseradish anymore.
Yeah.
I have to go to events. I have to speak at the library. I have to promote their horseradish. If anybody wants really good horseradish, go to Hinsdale, New York.
I didn't know that. What about the building inspector? Because some towns, the building inspector could be, if you're renovating, could be a real pain in the neck. Is the building inspector? I know we're on a podcast, we're being recorded, but is that part of the thing too?
No, he's not been he's been very he's actually, well, at least for me, he's very interested in the location. He allowed me, especially like when the whole septic system failed at the location. That's a costly thing to have to get done for a house unexpectedly. You're talking like 14, 15 grand. He was very cool with me and how I set it up and getting payment to them for coming, because they have to come out and build a whole plan for you. And then it has to be done according to the plan, the map. And he has to come out and inspect it. And he's been nothing but gracious to me. I think it's all about how you handle things first time around. So you show them respect, they show you respect back. Those are the main things. Like you got to remember that it's not just about that, it's about other things too. And you have to look at all, cross your T's and dot your I's with everything you're getting into. Think about parking. Think about all the little things that could piss somebody off, and you don't want to piss people off. I have a blessing because I'm in the middle of nowhere, but I know like Wildwood Sanitarium, who I'm very much involved with in Salamanca, New York. It's another restoration project that we're doing. It's in a residential neighborhood, and we have to worry about the neighbors, and we have to worry about parking. We have to worry about who's at the house, how they're treating the house, just every little thing, because you want people to help you. Like the county's actually paved the whole road up the mountain. It used to be a dirt road. They've put up signs. They've put the Hinsdale house on their web page. So I mean, they're proud of it now. They're proud of the member of the community that we've become. And I think at first you're scared, but it also can be a tourist attraction. I'm drawing in people from all over the world. I had last year 5 people from 5 different countries come in. Teams from 5 different countries come to the Hinsdale, New York, stay in hotels and eating at restaurants and checking out to see what else they have to offer. So I mean, it's a lot bigger picture if you market it and do it the right way.
A simple analogy is like you're better off having a friend with a boat than having a boat yourself, because all the work that goes into
that's
it.
Not even
it's crazy.
The renovation work. There's marketing involved. I mean, you can't sustain a location if you're going to use it for a haunted location. You can't sustain a location with the teams that are in your surrounding 2 cities. You got to let people know about it, and you got to travel around the country, get involved with paracons and different ways to promote it and let people know about it in order to draw people in from all around, because without the help of the paranormal community, it's going to fail.
Now, what about people who want to investigate the house? So there's like 2 types. There's the experienced paranormal team and the newbie.
Yeah.
How do you deal with both of those?
Well, we do. We have catered overnights. So we have my friend Amy Perry Lane and Jason Brock, Mike Smith, very seasoned paranormal investigators. They're the team called Para Expeditions. And before the pandemic happened, every once a month we would have an overnight tour that catered to the 10 people that were there. It was those 10 people formed a team for the night and went over all different styles of paranormal investigating. And I've had nothing but rave reviews for that. Now, the people that don't want to spend the night there, we also have tours at night that last about 2.5 hours, which will give them a history tour. It's guided, bring out some of the ghost hunting tools, and they get their little fix and they leave. Maybe some are interested in it more and want to come spend the night, and then they do the para expedition thing. Then they form a team, and then we have another team involved with research, which is great. And we also have the scaredy cats that don't want to come at night, so we have daytime tours. And I have an amazing psychic medium that will run the tours for me there during the day, and we usually do those 4 or 5 times a month. And people can come and experience it during the day and still get the stories, but not have the darkness. The new thing that I have is I have like if there's a house for sale and they have like the little cards.
Yep.
So we have that now too, so people can just take some information if they stop by. So it's pretty cool.
If I want to book a location or find out more about you, what website? Where do I go to do that?
My name, danielklaes.com. That'll give you access to everything that I'm doing as an individual, events that I'll be at. There'll be a link for the Hinsdale house on there. You can look at the calendar, read up a little bit about it. If you're interested in booking, shoot me a message. Pretty easy. If you hit me up on social media, shoot me an email, whatever. I answer everybody that sends me a message.
Yeah, you answered me, which I appreciate. If people want to help you, and help you keep this legacy going, do you have a Patreon page or anything they can go to?
Yeah, Hinsdale House Museum. We have some goals set aside for what we want to do with the property. I have a very dedicated group of people that are very interested in helping with keeping the house running, especially like during COVID and during the winter month. People that'll donate $5 or $10 to help pay a gas bill or help with plowing or shoveling, stuff like that. It really comes in handy, and it's actually come in very handy because without the patrons this year, the porch may have collapsed.
Wow.
Because of the money that we saved, that we were actually saving to put a museum in, to divert that towards fixing the porch up. So now the porch can actually be used as kind of like a base camp for the teams because you can heat it now, which is really cool. But before you couldn't.
So give us that Patreon page one more time, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's patreon.com/Hinsdale House Museum.
Excellent. Okay. And what about you? This isn't all that you do. You do a ton of stuff. Give us a couple of things where we can find you on VidiSpace or Amazon Prime or any radio programs that you have.
Well, I've stepped back from doing radio because I get to do awesome shows like this all the time now, and I seem to do these more than I did my radio podcast. I stepped back from that because I've just gotten so busy. I'm a director. I've directed my first series that's on VidiSpace. It's called Behind the Shadows Decades, and that actually dives into alternative theories at famous locations. So we're actually investigating alternative claims as to what may be making something tick at a location. And of course, the first location I did was Hinsdale House. It's a 2-part series, and we're in the midst of filming that. The Ghost Finders, we've been doing specials throughout the whole pandemic. So we have 2 out already and another one coming out at Fort Mifflin. We just put out Haldeman Mansion. So the Haldeman is out, and then the Winchester is out as well, that we put out right before Christmas. I'll be at a ton of events coming up. I got asked to go to Europe this year, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this pandemic will be over by the time that happens so I can go over there for the first time in my life.
Is this a full-time gig for you? Do you have a day job at all, or has this become...
Yeah, this has become my full-time thing, just working on this and working on just putting out good products and working on the house and working on myself. And I'm an author. I'm almost finished with my second book. The first book's been really successful. The first book I put out about the Hinsdale house, and I know I have a list here. I have a Trello account, and I just keep plugging away.
So what's that first book? What's the name of it? And is it on Amazon?
Yeah, it's called Hinsdale House: An American Haunting.
Beautiful.
And it's available on my website and my store. If you want a signed copy, I can send it that way too.
Awesome. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for your time. I mean, I know almost every night you're doing interviews and stuff. I've watched on YouTube a couple different interviews with you, but there's always kind of a different, interesting angle that comes out because there's always so much more to learn about what's happening at Hinsdale and what you're doing. So really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great. Hopefully we can do it again sometime.
You've been listening to the Afraid of Nothing podcast. Please subscribe and like us on Facebook. Until next time, stay scared.
Hey, you're still here? Great. Then why not listen to another episode? Visit afraidofnothingpodcast.com to peruse all the shows. That's afraidofnothingpodcast.com. And while you're there, click the coffee cup icon to buy me a coffee and leave a review. I'll give you a shout out in an upcoming episode. And the world will know how swell you are.